Delta 1782, contact Los Angeles Center 133.2, we'll see you.
Hey everybody, Step on the Ball, welcome back to the stream. This is the 5th attempt and probably only the 2nd stream that'll ever make it out onto YouTube. And that is due to some technical difficulties that we had last time in conducting the flight from Oakland, California down to Ramona, California near San Diego. We had that problem just yesterday. A series of problems, and I'm not too thrilled about that, but we are going to give it a try again. We are already going to have a good time here just based on the flight that we're going to do today. So let's jump over to the simulator, and as you'll see, we are in TBM. November 107 Juliet, we're currently on the ground at Oakland Airport, the Oakland Metropolitan Airport in California. We're connected to the PilotEdge network. We are flying the HotStart TBM from the venerable and wonderful HotStart company who has produced such a fine aircraft for us to fly today. We are going to review the operational flight plan in just a minute. We are already connected to PilotEdge. I am going to disable the audio momentarily because I do not want to be distracted with a bunch of chatter in the background while we're briefing the flight down to the Phoenix Mesa airport today. So the reason we're flying a different route today is because we lost our opportunity, unfortunately, to fly our passengers down to Ramona. We were really looking forward to that. Ramona is near the home base for November 107 Juliet on the Flight Sim Economy World. And we wanted to get her back home, but unfortunately unable. We are unable that, so we are flying down to the Phoenix area instead. This should be a relatively lucrative flight. We're looking at about 8,391 Flight Sim Economy dollars. Thanks to this trip today, and we'll talk about our passengers in just a second. Let's look at the operational flight plan that we produced using SimBrief. All right, so if you take a look here, you'll see that we are headed for just over a 2-hour flight down from Oakland to KIWA, or that's the Phoenix Mesa airport. That airport is in the southeastern portion of Phoenix. It is not the primary airport in the Phoenix area. Phoenix Sky Harbor, of course, being the primary airport, KPHX. We are going to KIWA, K-I-W-A. We're going to be planning to do that at flight level 310. That's the service ceiling for the TBM. We'll see if we're going to be able to get up there. We're fairly light as things go, I think, once we're in cruise. So we'll see if we can make that happen. We are transporting a medical transfer patient, a Class 2 Bravo medical transfer patient. That means that this patient is ambulatory in emergencies. So if we have some kind of emergency, we can ask that patient to help us. It is a pediatric patient and a flight nurse and the equipment that's going along. And that's a 849-pound payload. This is a 9-year-old male patient. He's being transferred for some reason down to Mesa. I believe he had surgery here in Oakland, and he's looking to convalesce back in Mesa near family. So we're looking at a 2-hour and 14-minute trip time today. We're taking along a significant amount of fuel here, and that is for a number of reasons. We're flying IFR. We need 45 minutes past our alternate airport. And as you can see, our alternate airport is the Tucson Airport south of Phoenix near the Mexican border today. Just a quick look at the routing. We're taking the Candle 4 departure Alotian transition as we tried to do last time to get down to Southern California, but this time we'll be going to Boyle or Boyle, I'm not sure exactly how to say that, and then over to the Blythe VOR, and from there the Blythe 5 arrival into the Phoenix area. I did check that out, and there is some uniqueness with the Blythe 5 arrival that we might have to contend with, but we'll take a look at that in just a second. Let's continue with the briefing. As I stated here, we're looking at about a 2-hour and 42-minute block time. That's from the time we move to the time we park, and we are getting pretty close to our maximum takeoff weight. Not exactly. I am still having a little bit of problem with SimBrief matching flight sim economy, matching the empty weight of the aircraft per HotStart. I will eventually nail that to the wall, but for right now, you'll see when we get over to the sim that we're about 200 or 300 pounds heavier in the sim than we are here. And yeah, so that's that. Here's, of course, our route of flight. We'll be using this to check our fuel consumption along the way. And a little bit about the forecasted winds at our top of climb. We're looking at the winds out of the west, so we should have a little bit of help by the Blythe VOR. They're a little bit more northerly, so that's not bad either. So anything from the west or the north is going to help us out today. Certainly don't need to care about the ICAO flight plan. Let's look at the weather. Some significant amount of SIGMETs in the both the Albuquerque Center and the Los Angeles Center. Nothing in the Oakland Center. Of course, we're only in Oakland for just a couple of maybe 100 miles or something before we get down into the LA Center. We'll take a look at this on the map in just a second. Looking outside, it is a little cloudy here in Oakland. That's to be expected, I guess, when we're looking at the METAR here. 10 statute mile visibility and few clouds at 1,400, few clouds at 12,000, scattered layer at 18,000. Temperature is reasonable. It's not too awful hot here. I guess that's the reason that the HotStart TBM hasn't complained to me since we've been sitting here on the ground so long waiting on the stream to start. And altimeter is 29087, so we'll also get that from the ATIS. Just a quick look down at the Mesa Airport, the Mesa Gateway Airport in Phoenix. Broken at 15,000, temperature 40. My goodness, that's hot. And the dew point 8. So very dry and very hot. And that should not be a surprise for Phoenix this time of year. Of course, it's currently 6:15 in the east, 3:15 in the afternoon in the west. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what time zone Phoenix is in. If you are in the chat and you happen to know that, drop that in the chat and let me know what time zone Phoenix is in. But in any case, it is the middle of the afternoon there, so we would expect it to be that hot. What I'm hoping is that 2 hours and a half from now, it's just a little cooler. Luckily, we're landing there. We're not doing a lot of climbing. We're doing some descending into that airspace, so I'm hoping that we don't have too much impact on performance here. The TAFs, they look decent. The wind shifting around, they're getting a little crazier. Broken at 800, overcast at 1200. That looks like a bad day. That's on the 22nd from 0300 Zulu. I hope that we're down by then. We certainly won't be in Oakland by then, but the weather in Oakland seems to be deteriorating. The weather in Mesa, however, appears to be staying roughly the same, maybe getting a little windier. The broken layer dissipating, the scattered layer coming up at 15,000, and visibility greater than 6 statute miles. Looks like a little bit of a wind gust situation, and the winds are out of the west in Mesa, so we'll go ahead and make a mental note of that and plan for an appropriate runway out in Mesa tonight. So if we dump the operational, oh no, we're not quite done with the operational flight plan, are we, silly me? First we need to skip the NOTAMs, as any good pilot does. We say that every stream. And get to the end here where we want to look at some beautiful weather maps. This should just confirm everything we know. Yes, the route looks about right. And here's our, I see that airport's right on the border of these embedded cumulonimbus clouds with tops to flight level 450. That's a situation just east of the airport. We'll monitor that and see if we can get the weather radar kicked on. So here's a little bit about the wind situation. Absolutely a little bit of a tailwind, a crosswind on this leg here, and then a little bit more of a tailwind as we get towards Phoenix. Now that's flight level 240, flight level 300, of course, a little bit closer to us and about the same wind profile. So let's go look at the vertical profile. We are departing from Oakland here, and we will overfly some pretty significant terrain here. The terrain over 10,000 feet between Boyle and the Blythe VOR, but of course dropping as we get into Mesa, and a little bit of a couple of spikes here, something to think about anyway. We'll just want to be, if we're not visual, then we'll just want to be careful with that when we get out to Mesa and make sure we're aware and have our terrain protection enabled, certainly not disabled. It would be by default, so we'll just make sure that it remains enabled when we get out there. So enough with the operational flight plan for right now. Let's get Navigraph pulled up and take a look at what Navigraph is telling us for the flight out today. So we're looking at the Oakland airport here. I've already copied down the frequencies that we need. Here is the route from Oakland down to the Phoenix area. It's a pretty much a nice little curve here, avoiding the mountainous terrain, and a pretty efficient route, especially with the winds. We should have a pretty good flight down there. Here's the Candle 4 departure, in case you're curious. It's basically just departing off a 28 right and then a left turn to port. And we should be making the Lotion transition. That's this bit here. And that'll get us on our en route portion of the flight. The Blythe 5 arrival, an interesting note here. This is for aircraft flight level 230 and below. I'm not sure exactly what to do with that. I think what we'll do is, if we don't get a descent to Blythe by flight level 230, we'll ask for one to make sure that we're in compliance with that. So I may need some help remembering that we need to do that. The other alternative arrival here into Mesa Gateway called out the Blythe arrival is the one that should be used by turboprops, and it says we should be at or below flight level 230. So we'll have to just use our best gut feeling about that. This is part of what this stream is about, is learning. I don't know. I'm not a commercial pilot. I don't fly a TBM in the real world, nor do I know every air traffic procedure or rule by heart, but that's part of what we're doing here today. We're learning a little bit about that. So let's take Navigraph out of the picture. Let's flop over to the sim, and I'll be right back over there to get this beauty started, get our clearance on board, and we'll get in the air and on our way down to Mesa. All right, we have got our frequencies tuned up here per the chart in Oakland. We have 121.1 tuned. That is the clearance delivery frequency, and 121.9 are tuned, which is the ground control frequency here at the Oakland airport. As I said, we are connected to the PilotEdge network, but we're going to have to turn on the comms in order to hear anything. I did have them off during the briefing so that we could make sure that we heard everything. Before we jump over to PilotEdge, however, I did want to show you the payload here. The takeoff weight, pretty high up there today, not the max, 7,200. You'll recall it was about 7,000 on the OFB and 7,198 here. So we're just about 200 pounds off. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't put us out of the envelope. I'm not worried about it. Everything else seems hunky-dory. So we're just going to let that ride. I am going to go ahead and close the doors here and try to get things rocking and rolling. Now I will notice here that we are on the GPU. That's not intentional. Actually, from the last flight, the GPU was enabled, and then we had to restart the sim before we started. So let's see what we can do here. Let's put PilotEdge on. And we need to go ahead and get the ATIS copied. So let's switch the frequency to the ATIS frequency
and if
here
flight
at
following
Oakland.
is requested, read back all runway assignments and hold short instructions. Advise on initial contact. You have information Tango. Metropolitan Oakland Airport, ATIS information Tango. 2253 Zulu. Wind 280 at 14. Visibility 10. Few clouds at 1,400. Few clouds at 2000. 18,000 scattered. Temperature 21. Dew point 12. Altimeter 2985. Arriving and departing runways 28 left, 28 right, 30, 33. Visual approaches in use. ILS runway 30 approach in use. VLS departures contact clearance delivery. Advise on heading, altitude, and if flight following is requested, read back all runway assignments and hold short instructions. Advise on initial contact. You have information Tango.
All right, so we have information Tango. I had to mute the other frequency there for a second. The PilotEdge audio seems to be just blaring through. Let me get a level reading on that so I know if you're able to sustain that on the stream or if that's going to be a significant problem for you to be able to hear me over top of the PilotEdge audio. I'm not quite sure exactly what to expect there. I think what we'll do is we'll take a moment here to turn the master volume down a little bit and turn the radios down just a hair so that we don't blow everyone's ears out on the stream today. All right, let's do this thing. We'll get our clearance. So 121.1, we'll call our call sign. I do have to remember, this is the third time I've tried to use this call sign, and I can't seem to get it right every time because I'm so used to just saying November 107 Juliet that it doesn't come naturally to say the .com 258 call sign that you see at the top of the stream there in the ATC box, DCM258, and that's our call sign today for our trip down. And I have not loaded the flight plan in yet, and the doors are closed, so we're going to get hot. So let's get this show on the road. Oakland clearance.com 258 information Tango IFR Mesa. All right, so now we'll just wait on the controller to get our request and call us back with a clearance. The
.com 258 Oakland clearance. Clear to the Mesa Gateway Airport. Handle for departure. Lotion transition then is filed. Climb via the SID and squawk 2637.
Okay, clear to Mesa via the Candle 4 departure Lotion transition then is filed. Climb via SID, squawk 2637, .com 258.
.com 258, read back correct.
Okay, so that was a success. We got everything there. Now we can get our route programmed into the flight management computer, or shall I just say the G1000, since it's not, I guess it's a form of a flight management computer. It's not what we think of typically as a flight management computer, however. So what we're going to do is select a procedure here, a departure. This is a standard instrument departure, and there's the Candle 4. Select that. We're going to take the runway 28 right transition and from the airport and then the Lotion transition onto the en route segment and load that up. So you see that the G1000 did that work for us, and now we just need to plug in the rest of the route. And in order to do that, I do need to pop over to my flight plan that we reviewed a little bit earlier today and find the necessary section of the document. I'm not going to pull that up because I think you guys can imagine how that looks after having looked it up before. But now we need to enter boily or boil. So I'm not sure how we're going to hear that pronounced a little later in the stream, but anything goes here, probably with with pronunciation of fixes. That's something funny we can talk about sometimes. There are some rather unique fixes out there in the world, and perhaps a recurring segment on this stream could be to find those interesting fixes that have funny names. The one that comes to my mind is India November Bravo Romeo Delta. That's a fix near the Florida-Alabama border that is pronounced inboard, but if you weren't careful, you could easily pronounce that inbred. And depending on who you are, you might find that just to be a little bit offensive. I'm not sure about that. So we are not going to select the arrival just yet because we need to put in the ICAO identifier of the airport we're going to first so that the G1000 knows which procedures to load up. And in this case, we have KIWA in there now, and we're going to select the arrival, not the approach, the arrival. The arrival gets you into the terminal area, and then the approach is how you get to the runway. So we're not going to select the approach just yet. We're going to take that as it comes. The Blythe 5 for the Blythe transition, we're going to load that up. And oh wow, that is bizarre. That was a very bizarre thing that the G1000 was doing. And I don't like to see that. That could be a foreboding sign of something to come, but we'll see how that handles that going forward. So here's the flight plan. The flight plan is all loaded up, and as you can see, as I move between these fixes, the moving map kind of centers on the fix, and the route looked pretty good to me in the few seconds that we flipped through it. So we're going to call that done. And now we're going to go through some flows here. We did get the ATIS already, so we can set the barometer correctly, 29085, and that's I'm not sure that that's completely matching my sim. I am going to put it to 29086 because I know that this airport is about 15 feet above sea level. We are going to climb via the SID, so that's an interesting thing that we need to look up. So let's get Navigraph back up, and let's take a look at what Navigraph tells us we need to do to climb via the SID. So to climb via the SID on the Candle 4 departure, we need to climb on runway heading to above 520 and then lee J below 2000. And then from there, a climbing left turn to 10,000. So I'm going to set 2,000 here on the altitude select. I haven't done a lot of climb via SID, but we're just going to do it that way. And if you know of a better way or a more appropriate way to do that, then you let me know. 2637 in the box, and we'll start that roll, and when we get ready to taxi, we'll put that into the altitude mode once the aircraft is actually ready to roll. And our standby instruments, we can just drop that down as well to 29086 so that that's set. And now we have all of our initials set and initialized. Our landing field elevation is set for KIWA at 1,379 feet. I did perform the interior inspection before the flight today, so we're just going to get started with the engine starting checklist. We have removed the chocks, and we got to turn the auxiliary boost fuel pump on, but I'm going to just start my flow per the normal from up here. If you guys notice any errors that I make along the way, please tell me about them. I am not an expert here, and I just like to play one on YouTube. So if you know something that I don't, and there's something that you can help me with, boy, I would sure love to know that. Let's just look outside. Our static wicks are removed, our pitot covers are removed, and our tires and caps are off of the engine. Our chocks are removed. And let's see, do we have a Flight Sim Economy flight active? We do. So we're all good to go in that front. And at this point in time, I believe we are ready to start this engine. At some point, I'm going to put on the headset down there to dampen the sound just a little bit. But while we're starting, I'm going to leave it on. The doors are open. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to get a timer up here for the start sequence. And we're just going to give it 2 seconds on the starter, which is I've already confirmed in the ignition auto. We're just going to flip this switch up, but I'm going to use my alpha flight controls to do that right here on the yoke in front of me physically. So, all right, there's the starter. The starter has engaged. We can see that the starter is engaged down here on the CAS panel. We're going to wait for 13%. That's good. We're ready to go to low idle. Low idle now. And, oh, we did not start the timer. Good gracious. You know what? The best of intentions, right? I started it, I didn't stop it. So we need to add about 10 seconds to that. But we're already 30, and we're probably not even 20 seconds into it. Now we're looking for 50 before a minute, and I think we're well going to pass that. So absolutely no problem to run it right here and over to the flight idle position now. Now that we've done that, we can turn the bleed on. We can get the AC running. And finally, the passengers can be cooled down. I think there was some other way that we were keeping them cool before. So let's get the pitot heat and the stall heat on. Let's turn on the inertial separator now to prevent any contaminants from messing with us. The starter has disengaged as we would have expected. We were looking for that earlier, and now we can put the aux pump to auto. Turn on the automatic fuel selector and check that the switch is going to shift us from left to right, so we should expect that to go to right. It did. If I can get down there fast enough, you'll see it go back to left. There it was. We'll turn on the autopilot and the trims because that's going to be important to us. That was a battery start. We're good there. I'm not going to check the generators today. That's not something that I typically do on every flight. And we'll go ahead and get the nav lights on here using the Alpha Flight Control yoke. So that went on. We are almost ready to taxi. We're going to have to turn on the transponder before we do that. I believe this is an ASDX airport that is going to require that. Let's go ahead and switch over to the ground free. Oops, that is not correct, but I needed to do that anyway. I wanted to be monitoring guard here, and now I'm going to go back to ground and get ground up over here, and we should hear some people talking again.
The 583 Mike Delta, descend and maintain 6,000.
While we're waiting here, I'm just going to trim up for departure. You can see the trims moving here in the trims box, and oops, I went the wrong way there. We'll set the flaps for takeoff when we get out to the runway. Our fuel looks as expected here. All the engine operating parameters are in the green. The parking brake's set, we know that, and we have our expected CAS message for the inertial separator being on. So let's just reconfirm information Tango and ready to taxi. And we'll get our transponder on. There we go. We're squawking altitude now. We are going to fly runway heading. We'll get that set when we get out there. We can go ahead and dial up the tower frequency. That won't hurt to just get that out of the way. So 118.3, or at least that's what we expect it to be. And then we can give a call to Oakland ground. Oaklandground.com 258, ready to taxi, information Tango.
.com 258, Oakland ground, where you parked?
Sorry about that, we're at Landmark Aviation on the northeast side.
.com 258, runway 28 right, taxi via Delta, Charlie, and Bravo.
Okay, 28 right via Delta Charlie Bravo.com 258. All right, let's look at that taxi route. Oh my goodness.
2376, contact NorCal
I
departure.
have
We'll
had
see ya.
Navigraph on the screen for the past how many minutes,
23,
and nobody told me because there's nobody watching. That's a terrible mistake, but I needed to bring up Navigraph anyway.
583 Mike Delta cross Lot Sierra
So
number 4000,
we want
cleared ILS runway
Delta
5, approach,
Charlie
circle runway
and
23.
Bravo down to 28 right. That's a pretty standard taxi route. And as you can see here, if we turn this little guy on, we are right here on
Local
the
departure,
airport.
United 376 through 4.7 on the track and free departure.
I have to figure out a better way to make sure that
United
you guys can see the screen. I don't know exactly how to remember that when I have the Navigraph system up, but it was blocking most of the engine start procedure. That's such a rookie mistake. I am not a real streamer, but we're just going to continue on with the flight anyway. All right, the altimeter, or I'm sorry, the transponder is set. Our flows look good here. Everything looks good in the cockpit. You know what? There's one thing that we need to do, and that's turn on. Let's get the flight plan off there, and let's go to the weather radar, and let's put that into standby mode so that this thing is warming up for our departure, and we can use that in flight. So here we go. We'll take off the parking brake, get ready to taxi. We'll give a little flash of the landing light here, or correction, the taxi light, to let everybody know that we're going to start moving, and we'll start out toward the runway via Delta, Charlie, and Bravo. Okay, we'll just continue on Delta here over to the left.
Good afternoon, Phoenix clearance, Cessna 90332 Whiskey.
Cessna 9332 Whiskey, Phoenix clearance.
Yes, sir, we're at the Northwest GA ramp. We'd like a VFR departure to Lake Havasu, Kilo Hotel, India via the Buckeye VOR. On course will be 259, 8,500. We'd like radar services, and we've got Lima.
Oh, that was a mouthful.
And what's your type aircraft?
Cessna Skyhawk 172.
Oh, yeah.
Slant G.
Thank you. 1 second.
Typical Skyhawk, right? I think real world might sound like that sometimes too. All right, the departure frequency that we're going to use today is evidently charted because that information was not shared with us during our clearance. So we're going to look for NorCal departure to the northwest on 135.1. Well, actually, you know, now that we think about it, the northwest is 120.9er and the west is 135.1. I'm not sure exactly which one to use, but I think we're going to choose 135.1. Now, hopefully these controllers are not watching my stream or monitoring my frequencies too closely as to which ones I'm tuned to, because I do like to switch a little bit early to the tower frequency. That's kind of a cheating method, but I'm pretty close to the runway end here, so I actually don't feel too guilty about that at all. And let's get that over there, and we'll go ahead and punch in 135.1. All right, our departure frequency is ready. We need to be careful that we do not or that we are ready. And you know what? I have missed my turn. I have gone past the Bravo intersection, and according to the chart, headed back that way. So we're going to make a quick little 180 here, back to Bravo, and make the left here. And so I think that's part of what is a little confusing here. I have Charlie here. It is charted as Bravo. If you look at Navigraph, we're charted as being Bravo. The scenery is saying this is Charlie. I'm pretty sure that should have some indication of being Bravo right here, but you know, once again, I could be wrong about that for sure. I do see a chat member here wants this call sign to be Medevac 258, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to be Medevac today. We are flying a private party medical transport, non-emergency, and so we are .com 258. Now I am going to be ready here to tune 120.9er in case that's the frequency that he wants me to contact, but we'll just have to kind of see how that goes whenever we depart and we get out of here. So I am going to put the flaps down for takeoff. We'll set the heading bug when we get out there. Altitude is set for takeoff. Our altimeter setting is correct. We tested our flight controls on the way out. We see our flaps coming down. The CAS system messages are normal. The the master warning is off. Takeoff speed 85. The inertial separator is engaged. The trims are set for takeoff.
We're not going to do the circle of the C3 like we told approach. We're just going to
and we're ready to go. Just to brief the departure one more time. This is going to be straight out to Lee J, pretty much runway heading to Lee J. I am going to go ahead and set Toga on the flight director. We'll have that ready to go, and it's time to call the tower. Oakland Tower, .com 258, short of 28 right, ready.
.com 258 Oakland Tower, runway 28 right, cleared for takeoff, wind 29014.
28 right, cleared for takeoff. .com. So we need it. We're going to try to let the thing do its job today, but our heading now is synced, and I'm going to start our timer. We're looking for 85 for the rotation today, and or possibly 87. And here we go. Get the torque set at an appropriate level for departure. Maintain the runway center line the best we can. 70 knots, 75 knots, 80, 85, 87, and a little late on the rotation, but nevertheless, we are flying. And the TBM feels good today, positive rate. Gear is coming up. It sounds like the gear is up. Let's just look. Confirmed, no lights. Gear is up. And the flaps can come in as well. Timer is running. And we're about to find out if we selected the appropriate departure frequency. And let's not get going too crazy there, my friend. All right, we are above 1,000 and put the yaw damper on, put the autopilot on, and put this puppy in nav mode. And flight level change mode as well. And we'll wait for our handoff to departure.
Phoenix ground, Cessna 9032 Whiskey.
This is not working appropriately. This is not working appropriately. Lee J is over here. Let's see. Let's hit direct Lee J. There we go. So that's my fault. I never commanded the autopilot direct Lee J. Let's see if he calls me out on that. Not sure exactly if he's going to notice that or not. He may not be looking at me closely enough, but that is a moment for us to celebrate on this stream, and you know how we do it. do that to mark any mistake that we make in the flight here. Now, technically, I think it's that runway heading until 520. So if I had to climb that far to reach 520, so be it. But that's okay. So now we are at Lee J. We're climbing via the SID. So I can now raise this to 10,000 and implement flight level change mode to get up on the climb. Let's see if I can get that going. There we go. And make sure our altitude is set. Now he hasn't handed us off to departure yet. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but we'll see. We'll see that. 10,000 is in the GPS as our next altitude restriction. We are climbing, so we're making sure to put our torque in as it gets eaten up by the climb and by the atmosphere. We can continue a little higher, steeper, I should say, rate of climb. We're only at, let's just keep that going to our max efficiency cruise cruise speed, climb speed. My goodness, can't speak here today. And that way we can get up as fast as we possibly can. We should get handed over to our departure controller soon. Let's take a look over at Navigraph to see what's going on. We did hit Candle. We didn't hit Lee J the way we wanted to hit it, but we did hit Candle. We are now direct port and climbing to 10,000 per the Candle 4 departure. All right, let's get Navigraph off the screen. There we go. Now we're still looking for our switch.
3 Mike Delta, we're off Alpha 1. We're going to Coast.
I think I'm going to give him a call here in just a second.
3 Mike Delta, welcome northbound. Intex parking via Alpha, and if you needed Bravo, cross runway 31 at Alpha. You can run the frequency. Have a great day.
Alright, Alpha, Bravo, cross 13 at Alpha. We'll probably take Bravo and join in on Bravo 4.
Okay.
And 3 Mike Delta, we broke out 600, about 50 feet, 650.
Thank you for the pilot.
OaklandTower.com 258. You want us with departure?
.com 258. Looks like you lost connection to the network, sir. Try disconnecting and reconnecting for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I can hear you still, so I'll try that now. Well, there's always something, right? Let's see if we can make that work.
Connected to PilotEdge.
OaklandTower.com 258.
Thank you. I see you again now. Contact NorCal departure. We'll see you.
Okay, over to departure.com 258.
She'll be making that request with NorCal approach once you actually get into their airspace. For now, to cross Hobo, I maintain 16,000 and the Reno altimeter 2988.
Okay, so NorCal departure. NorCalDeparture.com 258, 9,300 climbing via the SID.
.com 258, NorCal departure at our contact, climbing to level 190.
Level 190.com 258. Well, that's actually very helpful and well timed, because what that means is we don't have to stop our climb. So setting 190, we'll just confirm that says 190. There is another learning exercise here from the stream that we can all learn from, and that is when I looked at the charted frequency for this departure, I checked when I was deciding which frequency to use. I looked here and saw NorCal departure and west and northwest, and I struggled with learning which one I should use. But actually, the better way to do that would have been to look at the Candle 4 departure. It is charted right here, 135.1, and that should have been a signal to me that I should have noticed that whenever I couldn't decide between the two and they were too close together. But that's okay. we have learned, and that's a signal for yet another All right, back in the cockpit now. We are climbing very studiously to flight level 190 on the Candle 4 departure, headed out to lovely Mesa, Arizona. When we get to cruise, we'll talk about the nuances of patient classification for air ambulances, something that I didn't know anything about before I did the research for today's stream, and learned a little bit about just in the last 2 hours. So as I mentioned in our operational flight plan, if you recall, I'll pull it up again for those that might have missed it. We are transporting one 9-year-old male, and he is classified as a 2 Bravo, an ambulatory and emergencies type of patient. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what that means a little later in the stream. So yeah, so I did not put Navigraph on this. So I'm having a real problem here with me. I need a professional producer to sit behind me and switch the sources at the right time.
Contact Oakland Center 128.7.
Oakland Center 128.7.com 258. Okay, 128.7. You know, after a long work day, this provides some amount of needed relief, but honestly, it's very hard to focus on things clearly anyway for me. OaklandCenter.com 258, 16,000 now climbing flight level 190.
.com 258, Oakland Center, climb maintain flight level 230.
Flight level 230.com 258. All right, and then of course we had the mysterious disconnection from the PilotEdge network, yet I was able to hear him. That's a mystery that we won't soon forget. All right, we're well through 10,000 now, so I'm going to go ahead and get the lights off. We're going to turn off the landing light. We're going to turn off the taxi light. Of course, we'll leave the strobe light and the nav light on. And at this time, I am going to pull the inertial separator out. And between the reduction in torque, or correction, the increase in torque from the inertial separator coming back off and the climb, I should be good on overhead, and I should not have an over torque situation. As soon as we get this straightened out, and we're almost through the transition altitude now, so there we go. We're at the transition altitude, and we have selected standard baro. And the chat says, I'll produce but not sit behind you. Yeah, that's right. You know, it would be an interesting thing, I think, if, and look, of course, I have an over torque situation flashing at me there. And I thought it would be okay, and apparently that is not true. Not true at all. So we are trying out for the first time the status bar on the top of the screen for this flight. By the way, this left turn is expected. This is reaching port and turning towards KX. And everything looks good here. We're continuing to add torque as we climb. So back to the statement that I was saying before. Whenever we were looking at Navigraph before, I was using this chart. This is the airport diagram, and I was looking at these two frequencies trying to decide which of those two I should be using, but I was really mistaken there. What I should have been doing is using the Candle 4 departure, which very clearly specifies 135.1. 2745.com 258. Okay, 2745. There's a lot of frequency changes right here, and it gets a little tiresome, honestly, with the mouse. One day I will solve that problem and not need to use the mouse to change frequencies on the G1000. Until then, I'm stuck. Okay, who is this? Oakland Center? Okay, we'll give them a call. OaklandCenter.com 258 50220 for 50230.
.com 258 Oakland Center, climb maintain 50310.
50310.com 258. All right, that is our final today, and again, just in time to not have to stop the climb. We are climbing in flight level change mode. It's going to be increasingly more difficult to climb this high as we, to maintain this climb rate as we go closer and closer to flight level 310, which is of course the service ceiling for this aircraft. So we're going to see how that works out for us. We're also a little bit heavy, but that still should be within the operating envelope of the aircraft. And of course now I've forgotten to take off Navigraph while we handle these situations. But anyway, the story is the
you can resume on navigation, maintain appropriate VFR altitude, the Phoenix altimeter 2967.
Yes, I am climbing out at 130 knots. I would like to get to my cruise altitude so that I can stop managing the aircraft.
Left 258, clearance double.
I don't know if this would create a problem for the controller necessarily. I would like to think that if he needed me to go faster, he would ask me to do that. And so I am quite aware that a more appropriate cruise climb might be like 160 knots, but you know, that's maybe 170 or maybe even a little faster than that for some people. But I am just trying to climb like a homesick angel here so that I can stop thinking about managing the aircraft and spend just a little bit of time thinking about managing this stream, which seems to be a little bit of a headache these days. So we'll see how it goes. Although our climb rate is steadily decreasing. We've got all the power in, our inertial separator's off, so we don't have any more to give it. Not sure if we're going to be ITT limited today. It's not really hot enough here for that, I don't think, but very well could be. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah, I mean, I think the speed is my discretion, unless, of course, I'm commanded to do otherwise. So while you're right, they might not be happy about it. They do have a mechanism by which they can correct that situation if they don't like it. And so I'm happy to comply with a speed restriction if they would like to give me one. But as of right now, I am proceeding merrily on my way at 130 knots. And that's just how it is. I really, really, really want to just set up for cruise and kick back and have a little bit of relaxation time. So we'll keep the power in and just get up there as fast as we can.
Reno altimeter 10 or 88. Turn right heading 14, just back to Dallas, right 34 left, final approach course, maintain 2000. And I'd actually step by. And yeah, traffic 760, 34 left still closed. The visual 34 right's available, or I can give you the RNAV Yankee 34 right. Or any RNAV 34 right, I should say.
So that's a little bit more enjoyable. I even called out earlier in the stream that I was going to put that headset on after everything was started, and then I forgot. So that's what happens when you don't follow your checklist, you don't follow your flows, you get out of whack. And of course, here in the sim, things are just a little bit different than the real world, right? I mean, you would very much notice in the real world if you were flying this aircraft without your headset on. But in this case, because that audio wasn't quite noticeable to me, so we are now seemingly ITT limited here as we climb through flight level 290. So our cruise altitude indicated by that little white marker there, or I'm sorry, our cruise torque setting indicated by that little white marker there, not quite at 100% because the computer knows that we would otherwise be ITT limited. Of course, meaning the engine would be too hot before we reach 100% torque to use any setting above that. So we're 1,000 to go in the climb. And pretty soon we'll reach flight level tree 10 and we'll be able to speed up and get the rest of this show on the road down to lovely southern Arizona, to the Phoenix area. And here we come. That was a nice climb. Let's see, we climbed to flight level tree 10 in 18 minutes. And that was with some stopping at various altitudes until we were allowed to go up higher by contacting the departure controller. Now I'd like to find out what happened there with disconnecting from the network. I would have definitely probably noticed that we were disconnected if, for example, I couldn't hear anybody. That would be a huge signal, right? Just total quiet. But again, something that just doesn't happen in the real world, right? Is that problem. Oops, I've just bumped it a little too much there with my hand, and still a little hot there. We'll keep it right there, just below 840, and not the easiest thing in the world to work on. Now, once we get going a little bit faster, we might find out something a little different here. We should have, as I mentioned before, a bit of a tailwind, and so I think we're going to be helped if this is after, I think, Lotion. I think it was pretty much a crosswind until Lotion. If you look here at the PFD, you can see that the G1000 thinks that we're getting a 31 knot direct crosswind from the right. That may well be true. That is kind of what the chart showed. So what we hope is that the weather engine here in X-Plane switches that around to a little bit more of a tailwind when we transition off of the departure onto the rest of the flight plan here. It's very difficult to talk to you guys when I have ATC in my ear quite so loud. I have the desktop audio on the mixer turned down so that it's not so loud for you all, but it certainly is absolutely loud in my ear, and I need to fix that later. And these long transmissions make it even harder to hear myself and to think straight and to be able to talk to you. So you'll have to pardon my rambling whenever the ATC audio is engaged. So just using the, let's see, so the computer has asked us to set the torque roughly here in that white segment. So what I'm interested to do is to use the TBM performance app on the iOS device here, calculate a cruise setting, and see if it matches the computer in the sim. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty close, but I would be interested to see. So we want flight level tree 10, so we'll set tree 10 in the iPad here, and of course the outside air temperature. So let's get that off of the G1000. -46. Okay. -46 in the iPad, and a normal cruise at a setting of 87%. Wow, so that's the app that a real pilot would use, and that seems to match. I can't say that I'm surprised. The creators of the HotStart TBM are certainly known for their excellent modeling, so I can't say that I'm surprised by that matching. I am going to dismiss the timer and let it run. I don't want to look at that the rest of the day. And at this point, I think I'm just going to tinker here with the weather radar. Let's get the flight plan off for now. Just confirming KX, Lotion, and then Boil. So we should be good to go there. So we'll just toggle off the flight plan, toggle on the weather radar, and in the mode selection, put it on weather mode. Now you can control the tilt here, and so right now the weather radar is sort of just on a horizontal plane with the aircraft. If we want to adjust the tilt, we could have it look up in the sky above us, which wouldn't be much of a help for us, or look down. I think visually we can pretty much see there's nothing really going on here, which doesn't bother me too much. So I'm not concerned at this altitude and in this weather situation about spotting anything. I more so wanted to just tinker with the weather radar here in the aircraft because it's kind of cool and it's kind of nifty, and I like to learn a little bit more about this aircraft every time I fly it. I do want to sync the heading bug. No reason not to do that when we take a new heading or a new course. I'm going to turn on here in the bearing here, or the distance I should say, to the next fix, so it's a quick look so that we can, of course we can see it up here as well, so it's not super much of a help, but just one more place to be able to look to see where that next fix is. Of course that much more helpful when we're flying slant alpha.
2376, once you roll off from
or
that
tracking
turn,
in
the airport
localizer
will be
or something inbound.
15 miles toward the field inside.
Okay, so everything's looking pretty good right now. We've got our cruise power set, and we're proceeding on course very nicely, very nicely. And just going to take one more look here on the overlay out on Navigraph and check out where we're at in relation to things. So lotion, let's see, is this lotion? It is. So the scale obviously on the chart ends here. This is a segment that's not depicted to scale. It's quite a long transition actually. I mean, by the time you get to lotion, heck, you're halfway down to SoCal. In fact, the border we could probably expect to be switched to SoCal somewhere around lotion. We are going to overfly, I don't know if I said switch to SoCal, but I meant switch to LA Center. But we should be talking to LA Center for a good little bit of this flight, a majority of it even.
You're still in my airspace,
and then you know, by the time we get over here, we're only with Albuquerque for just a few miles before we get to the
my airspace runs all the way out to the Buckeye VOR.
Airport there. So we're getting a little airspace lesson here from the controller. Buckeye VOR, that's interesting. We would have expected that to be in Ohio, I think, but nevertheless. Let's get Navigraph off the screen now. Back to the cockpit. So let's see, is our overlay working properly? It looks like, let's just do a little bit of a comparison here between reality and the overlay. So the altitude, 30,962. That seems reasonable, right? We're maintaining flight level tree 10. The standard pressure is a little higher than, I'm sorry, the pressure is a little higher than standard, so we would expect a gap of a few feet anyway between 18,000 and flight level 180. So similarly, we would expect a gap between flight level tree 10 and our altitude here. So excellent. Let's see our heading.
Walker 175, read back correct.
Man, that is so loud. We're going to have to adjust that before the end here. Heading 123 and 124 there, some rounding errors, I'm sure. Indicated 197 knots and 336 over the ground. That seems to check out, not too terribly, although the screen's indicating 19 tree knots indicated. Of course, that's not super meaningful at this altitude. We care more about Mach, but interesting that it still doesn't match. Not sure exactly what to make of that, but let's see what our Mach speed is just for fun. 0.546. Okay, not too shabby here.
Delta 258, Portland ground. Push on Tango approved, face tail west, call me ready to taxi.
I probably should do the cruise checklist since I didn't do that before. The yaw damper is engaged. The lights are out. The throttle is set. Temperatures are good. The DI system is as required. Inertial separator's off. So we're good. We are at cruise and we are doing our thing. It is just about time to talk about our informational session for tonight. But first we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Number 780, Mike Zulu, Jackson Grunway, 19er, taxi to Alpha. Thomas 113 Echo, let the ground loud and clear.
All right, so hopefully we didn't miss anything while we were away. We were with the center. I don't expect that we were switched to anybody else while we were gone, but nevertheless, you know, something I didn't notice about the overlay, it's also reporting our flight progress at the bottom, so that's kind of cool. We are able to see sort of how far along the bottom bar there we are on the flight. It looks like we're just still under a quarter of the time that it's going to take us to get down to the Phoenix area today. So time now to turn our attention to some interesting information.
United 7, Trevor 2376, taxi to parking, looks like you're on Foxtrot there. Taxi via Foxtrot and Delta and Alpha to the terminal. And you can cross 34 left at Delta, remain this frequency. Have a good rest of your day.
So interestingly, in prepping for this flight, you know, I selected sort of at random the highest paying job on Flight Sim Economy to come down to Phoenix to deliver this Class 2 Bravo medical patient. And that kind of, you know, sparked a question in my mind about exactly what that means. So in doing a little bit of Googling before the flight tonight, did discover that there's this entire
258, pulling runway 28 left, taxi via Tango and Bravo.
Okay, that sounded like he said .com 258. So that's why
Track 9332 Whiskey, contact Albuquerque Center 128.45.
that's why I kind of stopped there for a second. So what I figured out here was that there's this so classification system of patients when they need to be transported. And I was an EMT at one point, and I don't remember sort of ever learning anything about this, but as it happens, oh, look at this, the weather has changed. That's the wonderful weather engine refresh that causes abrupt movements in the aircraft. So
Good evening, Albuquerque, Skyhawk, November 933, 2 Whiskey 8
I will just
500.
drag over into the view for all viewers a segment of a book here on Google Books related to the topic at hand, and quite interestingly, we have Class 1A is a severe psychiatric patient. Can think of a few of those. And Class 1B is a psychiatric patient of intermediate severity. So that's of course not any of ours today. Class 2A is an immobile litter patient other than psychiatric. So I had to look up what litter means because I was not familiar with that terminology. Apparently a litter, something I maybe should have known having been in the EMS field, is another name for a stretcher. So this is somebody who's immobile on a stretcher. They're unable to move under their own will. They're not walking wounded or whatever we might call them. And they're not mobile at all. But there is a Class 2B, which is they're on a stretcher, but they're mobile, so they can move in an emergency. And then, of course, the next section is walking 1C, Class 1C, Class 3, and Class 4. So these are what we would have called an EMS walking wounded. So I think this is aligning to the same idea of sort of like triage and treatment priorities, which is kind of the next section of this book here. I'm actually this is in a book called The Flight Nurse Guide. And so it's actually very interesting and something that I would like to read more about. So after the stream, I'll probably investigate that just a little bit further.
8263 Echo, runway 17 left, taxi Alpha.
All right, so back to the cockpit. Still as expected here, we are trucking right through our expected cruise. We're coming up on just about a quarter of the flight complete.
TBM 782 Mike Zulu Jackson Tower. What's your direction of departure again?
Okay, that's not us. I thought maybe that would be us. Another TBM there he's talking to. So everything looks good. Let's get the flight plan back up just for fun.
To the northeast approved, runway 19 clear for takeoff, wind 280 at 8.
So we are, obviously we can tell this by looking at more than one location, but we're about now 45 miles from Lotion, so we can expect that frequency change sometime reasonably soon. I am going to try to take some outside shots here of the aircraft flying through the air now for your amusement. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go, to be honest with you, because I have varying degrees of success with changing the view of the aircraft and crashes and that sort of thing. So let's just get a couple of outside views, and pardon me if this is loud. I must say, I find that particular view to be rather nice. It's kind of a nice view of the TBM
Pulling departure
flying
frequency
around
118.42 for Alaska 258.
up here at flight level tree 10. Quite a nice view.
Last 258, pulling tower, runway 2 left, clear for takeoff on 3508. Number 8263, echo contact, Denver departure, we'll see you. Number 8263, echo Denver departure, radar contact, climb maintain 90,000.
And center, Skyhawk Whiskey.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just let you know we're going to have our flight plan to go direct, Needles, BOR, Echo, Echo, Delta, and then Havasu.
Correct 9332 Whiskey, Roger. Routing changes, they don't mean too much to us unless you're IFR. Just maintain VFR and do whatever you gotta do.
32 Whiskey, Roger, thanks.
Falcon 258, contact for one departure, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, Center 32 Whiskey back with a question.
GPS 2974, pulling tower, hold short 28 left for intrail spacing between you and the departing traffic.
It's actually very interesting that he said that. In the few times that I've had flight following in the real world, the controller wanted to know about altitude changes, wanted to know about course changes. His reasoning was that that would help him realize if we were off course and lost or just doing it on purpose. He would rather know. .com 258.
.com 258, contact Los Angeles, center 133.2, we'll see you next time.
133.2, .com 258.
Scott 32 Whiskey, go ahead.
So of course
Yeah,
I missed that call because I was too busy.
Can you do that in PilotEdge, or does that need to be preloaded with the flight plan?
Because I was sitting here running my mouth.
Do you want to do IFR to Havasu?
And
not this time, just wondering whether it was available or not. We'll
talking and actually eating at the same time.
Totally fine with us.
And you know, I have several dogs here in the cockpit that are now interested in me and what I'm doing because I am eating, and that just makes everything just a little bit harder. LACenter.com 258, file tree 10.
.com 258, LA Center, good afternoon.
Okay, that sounds like Goldsy. I don't know for sure. I need to hear him a little bit more, but that's the gist I get. That makes me happy. I like Mr. Goldsy. He's an excellent voice to hear when you're flying through the
Mike Big, still again.
PilotEdge skies.
3020 Mike, two things. I need you to connect to the network with the November in front of your call sign. You just connected as 3020 Mike without the N in the front. Second, I do not have a flight plan. Okay, so basically the way it works is you're connected to the network as 3020 Mike. You need to be connected as November 3020 Mike. If you filed your flight plan as November 3020 Mike, they're not going to link up with your aircraft, therefore I'm not seeing it. So best option right now, just disconnect, reconnect, put the November in front of your call sign, and we'll go from there. Papa Delta, see you later. 405 Echo Romeo, radar service is terminated. Contact Almighty Tower 121.2. Five Golf Sierra, clear X Santa Catalina VOR.
One thing that's certain about streaming is it gets tiresome talking for the entire flight. I assume that it also gets tiresome listening for the entire flight. So
405 Echo Romeo,
probably
Almighty
need
Tower,
to
turn
come
right
up with
base,
some way
Romeo
to play a
19,
little
Romeo
bit of
19,
music
clear
in the
touch and go. The
background.
intentions after the touch and go.
I think I have a way to do that. We'll maybe put a little music on here for, I was planning to use it only for moments when I've stepped away from the stream, but presumably it's also useful for sort of just that en route phase where there's not much going on, and you don't necessarily want to listen to me talk and narrate my way through counting down the nautical miles until the next fix. So I'll continue dinner here and play a little music for you guys.
Are you going to turn them back into my departure path there? Gotcha, thank you. Next 20 for 90 SoCal departure, radar contact, climb and maintain a 17,000. Mike Abbott there now, you ready to copy? Zero Mike's clear to the Ontario Airport Meadows for departure. Radar vectors Shafter, then as filed, maintain 3,000, expect 11,000, 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 118.8, squawk 1432. 2020 Mike, what sim are you running? Yeah, you should be able to just turn the volume knob right on your radio, it should work. .2490, I see nothing around you. Yeah, closest plane there, I got one at your 11 o'clock, 3.5 miles at 5,000, and one right below you now at 1,500. position that is filed. Climb via SID squawk 4415. Southwest 1782, read back, correct. 3020, Mike. If that doesn't work, you should be able to go into your sound settings, and then I'm not sure if it's done through the client. I haven't flown FSX in years, but I'm not sure if it's done through the client or if it's done through the actual sound settings in the sim. I think it might be done through the client though.
All right, it is time for a fuel burn check.
We will be here.
We'll just check out things and see how it's
For
going.
about
So
5.5 hours.
we didn't actually take note of our fuel consumption at Lotion,
Good luck figuring it out.
but we can see here that at 6 pounds per gallon and
November Tango, connect LA
1,200
Center,
pounds
135.5.
of expected fuel on board, estimated fuel on board,
35.5.
we should have been looking at something on the order of 200 gallons of fuel here. If the airplane is burning in the way that SimBrief thinks that it should. So I should probably put up Navigraph to show you, correction, not Navigraph, you would rather see the operational flight plan. For Lotion, in this column, estimated fuel on board, we have 1.2, that's 1,200 pounds at Lotion. We should have had about 200 gallons on board at that time. And so if we pop back over to the airplane and we pull up the multifunction display, make that a little bigger so you guys can see what's going on, and we turn off the flight plan and we turn on the systems and fuel, then we can see that we've used 58 gallons of fuel, and we have 203 gallons remaining. Well, that sounds pretty good to me. We expected 200 at Lotion. We're well past Lotion now, and we still have 203 gallons of fuel remaining. I would say we're doing pretty well on our fuel burn, and we're outperforming the fuel burn by a little bit, but you know what? It ain't far off. And this is an estimation anyway, because frankly, the operational flight plan's decimal accuracy of 1.2 is rounded to some extent, and it's rounded down here, so, or I'm sorry, up. So I guess that's maybe in the wrong direction, but nevertheless, we do see something close to accurate. So we're expecting 200, we got 203, now 202. I would say that's pretty good for what we're looking to do here in the sim today. So that's a little bit about the fuel consumption, and now we will flip back over and look at our flight plan again. Keep that up, and at some point we'll start briefing the approach into Mesa. For now, we'll just continue to listen to a little bit of music and enjoy the cruise.
136 Juliet Romeo San Luis ground for the Cat 3 runway 29er taxi by Alpha. Echo Romeo, SoCal approach, Ontario, altimeter 2980. For 3020 Mike, yep, clear to the Ontario Airport. Meadows for departure. Radar vectors Shafter, VOR, then as filed, maintain 3000. Expect 11,000, 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 118.8. Squawk 1432. Mike, read back correct. Number 5 November Tango, connect Santa Barbara approach 120.55. 120.55, King Air 500 Tango. November Tango, Santa Barbara approach, altimeter 2982. Thanks for Lima. Do you have an approach request? 5 November Tango, roger, expect visual approach 225. Number 5 Golf Sierra, connect SoCal approach 127.4. 127.4. Juliet Romeo, San Luis Tower, make left, close traffic, report midfield down 1 each time, runway 29 clear for takeoff. Number 5 Golf Sierra, SoCal approach, the Catalina altimeter 2986. Do you have an approach request? 5 Golf Sierra, roger, the VOR Alpha or Bravo. Yeah, which one is it, the Alpha or the Bravo approach? Gotcha, no problem. Golf Sierra, roger, across the Santa Catalina VOR at or above 3,400, cleared VOR DME Bravo approach. Getting the altitude again, 3,400. Okay, again, 3,400, 3,400. Thank you. We're 31 Sierra Lima, Fullerton Tower, right turn not approved, runway 24 clear for takeoff. 405 Echo Romeo, connect Ontario Tower 120.6. November Tango to Center, maintain 3,000, Santa Barbara Airport, 12 o'clock, 11 miles. November Tango cleared, visual approach 225. 405 Echo Romeo, Ontario Tower, entering right downwind, runway 26 left.
All right, that was a much needed little break,
Tango,
a little
Santa
step
Barbara Tower,
away.
19.7.
Not truly a step away, but just to sit back and relax and enjoy the scenery of flying over Southern California. It's actually a very beautiful, beautiful scenery here. We don't, there's not much to see. It's just, this is, I believe, stock or default X-plane. I'm not sure if I've actually loaded orthophotography for this area, but it's just a beautiful sight to look out on, these mountains here. This is that terrain that we saw.
CX Juliet Romeo, runway 29 cleared for the option.
And look at this. We have been alerted that our scenery is faulty by X-plane. Thank you, X-plane, for letting us know that on the stream. Always a help. Always awesome. I think there should be some kind of streamer mode in X-plane that allows you to suppress non-critical warning messages so that you're not embarrassed by them while you're flying over, well, I don't know, the mountains of Southern California, and it's warning you about a scenery problem in Long Beach, California. So the idea that I had earlier, and now this is probably something that someone can run with and make a lot of money, remote switching for OBS. And this is OBS, in case you don't know, is the software that streamers use to produce their stream. And it might be nice, for example, if a external party could remotely switch the stream source. This came up earlier when I kept forgetting to take the Navigraph screen or the SimBrief OFP screen off of the stream. And I was, for example, during the engine start, I believe I had the Navigraph screen up and on top of everything the entire time. So it might be nice to have some sort of control remotely done by someone that's monitoring your stream from another location. Quite an interesting idea there. Okay, based on our flight plan and kind of looking at the little bar across the top of the screen, I can see that we're just about halfway. Just about halfway. And it's interesting to note here, our outside air temperature has increased, negative 42 now. I believe that's an increase. Let's see what it was previously. Yeah, it was negative 46 then, so it's gotten warmer by 4 degrees. And predictably now the airplane is commanding a slightly different cruise setting, so to compensate for the warmer temperature. And of course, that's going to be about 84% according to the app and according to HotStart here. So we'll set 84, 85, something in that ballpark, and we'll see how that does for the airplane. Now, we can expect this to continue to get worse and worse. And when I say worse, I mean, you know, lower and lower torque settings due to the temperature rise. As we looked at before we left, the temperature out in Phoenix was around 40 degrees. So that's quite warm. And so I'm not really sure what to make of that. I don't know that I've flown the TBM that high, this high, in that kind of temperature area. Of course, it won't be 40 degrees at flight level 310, but it will be considerably warmer, and it will impact the cruise torque setting. So we'll see how low that has to be set when we, let's say, forget LA for a minute, but let's say we get over to Albuquerque. Now, I do expect to be a lot lower by then. That does bring up an interesting question. And I'm not exactly sure how to interpret what I'm reading on this chart.
Tango
So
Alpha Bravo to Atlantic,
let's flop
cross
over
15 right,
to
15 left at Alpha,
Navigraph and let's take a look at this for a second. This is the chart, the Blythe 5 arrival into the Mesa Airport. I'm actually just going to turn off the overlay for a second. Let's see how I can do that. I can click here. And as you can see, the expectation here is for aircraft flight level 230 or below. I'm not sure if this is on me to request flight level 230 at Blythe, or if ATC will just automatically do that. I'm leaning towards this is part of their normal operating procedures, and there's not a lot that they need to have explained to them. But I also don't want to be negligent in assuming that if I'm supposed to do something that I'm going to do it. So there's a little bit of a question there in my mind about exactly who has the onus of responsibility for ensuring that we're at the right frequency upon arrival at the Blythe VOR. Okay, well that's no good. We are getting warnings now about our sim operating at a lower level of performance. I have a feeling that's because we're loading in a lot of scenery or something. I'm going to do something that I probably normally would not do on a stream and just turn on the frame rate indicator up there, which is actually blocked by the banner, so that's kind of convenient. We're getting about 16 frames per second, so we are going to have to do something about that. That's not really acceptable. At this point, we're probably affecting the PilotEdge network. So we're going to go ahead and just go into our graphics settings that are already pretty high, and let's just knock down some of these settings here briefly. And I'm not sure if that has the effect of disconnecting anything from the PilotEdge network or not, but or if it shows up as a pause or what happens when those settings are adjusted. In my mind, I like to think that it continues onward and the plane is still hurtling through the sky at 300 and whatever miles per hour. But realistically speaking, I think it probably shows up as a pause on the controller scope. So hopefully we're not paused for too long. I actually didn't anticipate that it would take this long to reconfigure the graphics settings. This is normally something that doesn't take quite so long. I'm a little disappointed in the behavior here, but in the meantime, while we're waiting on this to load, let's go back to Navigraph and let's look at something more interesting than a loading screen. Here's the Blythe VOR here that you can see, and that is
American 2490 cross Skull.
Not to scale. I just heard another aircraft cleared to the Blythe VOR. Turboprops expect to cross below 17,000 and expect vectors after passing Solemn. So we'll expect that. And yeah, interesting. So turbojets at 250, that doesn't reply to us. Landing west, turbojets expect that, and landing east, turbojets expect that restriction, so those don't apply to us. There's the Buckeye VOR. Interesting. Okay, so that's the VOR that we were talking about just a few minutes ago when Goldsy was explaining the extent of his airspace. So it looks like LA might actually even go to here. That might actually be where LA picks up. I'm a little concerned about this, about the loading action going on behind us here. That's doesn't seem to be a normal load. There it is. We are now back to approximately 15 frames. Okay, we've done something awful here to force our frame rate down. So we're gonna have to figure out what's going on. This hasn't happened previously. This hasn't happened previously on other flights. It's disconcerting that it's happening here. I'm sure that if I look out the window or something, I can increase the frame rate, right? So the more I zoom in, the less I have to actually compute. So I'm looking at a smaller section, so I'm at 25 frames now. But back to here, not so much. So we're just hovering under 20 frames now. So we can, I'm not sure if I do this, if this is going to affect anything or not. Let's see, that brought it up by just a hair. It's still hovering around 20 frames. That is not an acceptable frame rate. 20 might be okay. That's probably okay. If I leave it zoomed in here, I'm getting about 23 frames per second, but that's not a very interesting or compelling view, is it?
Juliet Golf Santa Barbara clearance on departure, fly runway heading. Maintain VFR at below 1,500.
I'm interested to see if we look at an outside view, what kind of frames we get. Yeah, 23, 24, 25 frames there on the outside view. 27 now. Uh-oh. And we're turning, and that's an expected turn. Good. So as we've reached Boyle, and now we're direct Blythe. So that means we're entering the terminal, I'm sorry, not the terminal environment, but we're now direct to the transition on the arrival, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So we have no more fixes before the arrival. So if he cares about our altitude, I would expect a descent from ATC at this point to put us down to flight level 230 per the instructions on the Blythe arrival.
3020 Mike, Bakersfield Tower, runway 30 right, clear for takeoff. Charlie Bravo, Santa Barbara clearance.
Kind of weird to hear 258 Charlie Bravo, since most of the time I fly with 258 Lima Bravo. I wonder if it's named similarly according to the same naming convention that I use for my aircraft. I'm sure that it probably is. If I look at the pilot's information,
Charlie Bravo,
I would probably see something that leads me to believe that his initials are Charlie Bravo.
Departure frequency 120.55, squawk 4420.
So frames are doing a little better now. 2.1 now, even zoomed out. Let's see if I give it the full zoom out, what we get. It's still hovering around 2.1. I feel like there was something complicated. Normally this plane at altitude hovers around 25 or 26 frames. So I'm thinking there must have been something at altitude that was a little different. Maybe some scenery that didn't load in the same way as it has in the past, or something that's a little different than normal that would have caused a low frame rate. We did get a warning from X-Plane, which is interesting. I don't know if I've ever gotten a warning from X-Plane about that before. Now we're back down to 18 again, so we're definitely encountering some strange behavior. By zooming in here, we're at 30 frames per second, so there's definitely something going on down here. Combining the scenery with the avionics. Now, historically, you know, as we descend, that frame rate will improve. So we'll just kind of monitor it closely until we start our descent, and then we'll figure out where to go from there. It's a little frustrating, frankly. Not something that I'm happy about, for sure. Not a standard thing that you would see on a flight sim stream as somebody configuring their graphics properties, but it is what it is. It's like the second stream we've done, so hopefully that sort of thing will get better over time.
5 Golf Sierra, Roger. I for cancellation, receive radar service terminated. Squawk VFR, frequency change, brief.
Okay, enough thinking about the frame rate. That's kind of
550
depressing.
Juliet Golf, Santa Barbara ground, runway
At this
25,
point,
taxi by
probably
Bravo Alpha
time
Golf.
for us to get the ATIS on board for our arrival. We may be able to use...
Walker 175, descend by the Hollywood 1 arrival.
We may be able to use the ATIS at this point. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be able to pick it up from this far away. I mean, after all, we are still at least more than 100 or 150 miles away, but we are pretty high as well. But it won't hurt to have it tuned, that's for sure. And that frequency 133.5. So let's get 133.
Charlie Bravo, Santa Barbara ground, runway 25, taxi by Bravo Alpha Golf.
Tuned up over here in the COM2 panel, or COM2 radio, and get that on standby so that we can swap between that and guard. And let's just see what we hear when we pick up 133.5.
At Bravo, taxi to transient parking.
6 Juliet Romeo, ramp by Alpha, this frequency pass for the Cat 3.
Roger that, thank you very much.
35 Victor Tango, Torrance Tower, runway 29 right, clear for takeoff.
29 right, clear for takeoff, 35 Victor Tango.
Interesting. So I think we might actually be tuned to a working frequency that's being used to control an airport at this point. And it might be something that we only pick up on an ATIS when we get a little closer over there. So I'm not 100% sure if that's what we were hearing, or if we were hearing the frequency that we were on the COM1 radio. We are selected for COM2, so we're going to hear whatever's on COM2 and COM1 sort of blended together. So I think we'll just wait.
The 3020 Mike, connect Bakersfield departure.
Of course, we know what that frequency is. We'll just leave that tuned. That may have been just a mistaken ear. I can't imagine that we were hearing something from what amounted to ground frequency that's different than the one that we're listening to, unless it's the Western U.S. ground frequency or local control frequency for PilotEdge.
3020 Mike, connect Bakersfield departure.
Las Vegas departure, Las Vegas Tower, Southwest 1782, ready to go, 19 left.
Southwest 1782, Las Vegas Tower, runway 19 left, clear for takeoff, wind 190 at 5.
Clear for takeoff, 19 left, Southwest 1782.
3020 Mike, Bakersfield. American 20
Tower, this is November 550 Juliet Golf, holding short, runway 25, ready to go.
American 2490, contact Albuquerque Center 128.45.
845, American 2490.
35 Victor Tango, connect SoCal departure.
SoCal departure, 35 Victor Tango.
550 Juliet Golf, Santa Barbara Tower, 123 at 4, runway 25, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 50 Juliet Golf, thank you, sir.
Still 127 nautical miles to go to the Blythe VOR, so we have quite a bit of time here.
35 Victor Tango, SoCal departure.
Let's just do a little bit of speculation here. If we wanted to be at flight level 230 at Blythe, hypothetically, let's just see what we would have to do that. We would call for descent in 15 minutes at 1,500 feet per minute if we wanted to be at 22,000 feet at Blythe. So we have plenty of time and plenty of time to think about that. Obviously, this plane to lose 9,000 feet isn't going to require much time at all. And if you do the math
405
here,
Echo Romeo, Ontario, clearance on departure, flight heading 285, maintain VFR at or below 3,000, departure frequency 135.4, squawk
we have
6337.
about 122 minutes to go, or correction, 122 miles to go and 20 minutes to go until we get to the Blythe VOR, and the descent is called for 15, so it thinks we only need about 5 minutes for that descent. Seems about reasonable, so I will accept the recommendations of the
550 Juliet Golf, radar contact,
VNAV profile, and if necessary, we'll let that start our descent if we're given, for example,
on my way
a
up to 1500
descend via pilot's
Juliet Golf,
discretion.
Roger, connect Santa Barbara departure.
Switching to departure, 0 Juliet Golf, thank you, sir.
258 Charlie Bravo, Santa Barbara Tower, runway 25, clear for takeoff, 123.04. Runway 25, clear for takeoff, 8 Charlie Bravo.
Santa Barbara departure, good afternoon. This is November 550 Juliet Golf. Runway heading at 1100 on my way up to 1500.
550 Juliet Golf, Santa Barbara approach, altimeter 208.1, cancel the altitude restriction, resume on navigation.
Cancel altitude restriction and resume all navigation, 0 Juliet Golf, thank you.
Bakersfield approach, King Air 3020, Mike, you here?
3020 Mike, indeed, I've tried to reach you about 5 times.
For some reason, I think I was hitting the wrong button again for my mic. 3020 Mike is level 3000.
3020 Mike, Bakersfield departure, radar contact, turn left heading 150, climb and maintain 1000.
Left 150, climb maintain 1000, 3020 Mike.
Okay, probably it's time for us to start thinking about an approach to plug into the GPS, even if we're not going to use it over in Mesa. It's not such a big deal, but
.com 258 after
if there's
the
some
Blythe
reason
VOR,
why we
join the
need
Arlen
to
4 arrival.
have an approach dialed in, or we just want a little extra guidance to the runway, it'll be nice to have that there so that we can avoid any
.com 258 LA Center.
.com 258.
.com 258 after Blythe, join the Arlen 4 arrival.
Okay, after Blythe, join the Arlen 4 arrival. .com 258. Well, I guess that answers that. I have not yet learned to hear .com 258 as my call sign yet.
258 Charlie Bravo, radar contacts the altitude.
I need to get that straightened out, but I also probably need to not be talking to you
Charlie
all
Bravo, contact
when I should be
Bravo
listening
departure.
to the ATC.
Go to departure, Bravo.
So the Arlen
Bravo
4 arrival
1782,
at Blythe. All right, let's get that going. This is bound to be something that I don't really want to do, but we're going to do it anyway. So open the charts list on Navigraph and look at the Arlen 4. So
Yeah, we're hitting the restriction.
yeah, here we go. So the Arlen 4
Santa Barbara
turboprop aircraft planned the Blythe arrival at or below flyable
258 Charlie
220.
Bravo, Santa Barbara approach, altimeter 208.1,
Blythe
cancel the altitude
transition for
restriction,
turbojet
and resume on
aircraft at flyable 240 and above.
2981, cancel the altitude restriction and on
So
navigation.
that's why I selected that, because this seems to be charted so that I would not fly the Arlen.
Southwest 1782 Las Vegas departure, radar
But
contact, climb and maintain flight level
nevertheless,
190.
we will
Climb and maintain flight level 190, Southwest 1782.
give it a ring here and try to program it into the G1000. So let's get the this guy up
Romeo
here,
Ontario, ground runway 26 left,
and
taxi
let's
by
get this
Sierra
guy up here,
26 left via Sierra Whiskey 405 Romeo.
and let us do this first. I've learned my lesson the hard way about reprogramming things in here, so we have 96 miles to Blythe. Let's set that heading bug.
It's your Mike Sierra. I'm not taking any more
Synchronize
flight
it.
following requests right now.
There we go.
No problem.
And let's go
You
into
can get
heading
you moving though
mode.
if you want to taxi out.
And just let's make sure that's a straight on
yeah, I'll
to
call you up on
Blythe.
the ground frequency.
Oh, it is not.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we don't have an unlimited
Might be able
amount
to
of
do something
time.
for you airborne. I'm
to
just getting
be on
swamped here
this
now,
heading.
and I'm trying to get help, but it's not coming.
So we'll move to the heading
Understood,
mode,
and 80 Mike Sierra is at the
put the flight plan back
southwest
up.
ramp and taxi to the active.
We'll go to the
Golf.
It's your
procedure.
Mike Sierra, only
We'll
16 right,
select
taxi by
the
Alpha Charlie.
arrival
165
and the
via Alpha
Arlen
Charlie, 80 Mike
4.
Sierra, and good luck, sir.
Thank you. For 3020
There.
Mike, direct Lake Hughes VOR, that's Lima Hotel Sierra, resume on navigation.
There we go. And if we now put this back to here,
And having to repeat every transmission twice doesn't help either. Blocker 175, connect SoCal approach
we're gonna go to
132.37.
Blythe.
32.37,
There we go. So now
3020, Mike, clear direct.
there
Wake Hughes, VOR,
is what we
resume on
expect to
navigation.
see. So let's now pin
Direct Wake Hughes and resume on navigation for 3020.
the
Mike, I think I hit the wrong button
RLN4.
again, sorry.
There we go. And so let's just see. That's Blythe,
SoCal approach, Blocker
Skull,
175, descending via
Cali,
Hollywood
Hydra,
1, flight level 18.6.
Paint, Arlen, and
Blocker
then
175, SoCal approach, LA altimeter 382.
Amber,
Do you guys park on the north or
Alleys,
south side of the terminal?
Tukey. All right, that looks good
The
to
south
me.
side of the terminal.
Let that
Blocker
ride.
175,
We're gonna pin
SoCal approach,
this.
Chile altimeter 1082, cleared
Let's
ILS runway 25
unpin the
left
Blythe
approach.
arrival so that we don't get
Thank you for that.
confused with that
Cleared
later.
ILS 25 left approach, Blocker
And of
175.
course, you can't see what I'm doing because I have failed to turn on the Navigraph information, but that's okay. You're looking at something even more elegant than that. Now direct to the Blythe VOR, and if we look, we're still direct to Blythe, so going to the nav mode should not be any problem for us. So
Southwest 1782, connect
we're
LA
going to
Center
go back to nav mode,
133.2.
direct Blythe, so that we can resume our
.com 258,
intended
connect
route.
LA Center 124.62.
2462.com 258.
LA Center, Southwest 1782, passing 17,400 for flight level 190.
Southwest 1782, LA Center, climb and maintain flight level 340.
Climb and maintain flight level 340, Southwest 1782.
Oops, went too far. LACenter.com 258, flight level 310.
.com 258, LA Center, good afternoon.
Okay, so at Blythe, join the Arlen 4 arrival. And he did not say descend via the arrival. And there are no, well, there's this restriction here if we're a turbojet, but that's obviously not important. That's not important. We can expect to cross Scully below flight level 250.
I'd like to pick up IFR clearance with information due.
Skull, that is. So let's get that
193
in.
Tango Hotel, Palomar ground, clear to the John Wayne Airport on departure, flighting 250, expect radar vectors Oceanside VOR. And then as filed, maintain 3000, expect 6000, 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency
Right.
19.6.
So now we're
squawk
15 minutes again
4733.
from our top of descent for 25,000.
Clear to the John Wayne
That's
Airport,
Skull.
fly runway heading 250,
And
radar
it also
vectors
says to
Oceanside.
expect vectors
Altitude
after
3000,
Skull.
expect
So
6,000, 5
fine,
minutes
no
thereafter,
problem here.
frequency
We'll expect that.
119.6. Squawk
And
473.
our frame rate has significantly increased.
193 Tango Hotel.
We're at 35 frames
4733 it is.
now.
Yep,
Even
back in
zoomed
script.
out 35 frames. So there definitely is something going on with that SoCal area that dropped the frame rate pretty significantly. So just so you guys can see this arrival, I'll put Navigraph up. This is the Arlen 4 arrival into Mesa. And that guy is charted as turbojet only for this altitude, so we'll see what we expect there. He may descend us down below that before we have to worry about that at all. So
Ontario Tower, Skyhawk 405 Echo
and I
Romeo,
just
holding
realized
short
that
26 Whiskey, ready for
that
departure.
altitude restriction
405
we
Echo
put in
Romeo,
at
Ontario Tower,
Blythe,
16 left,
oh I'm
clear for
sorry, no,
takeoff,
that's
and
white.
240
That means it
at
was
11.
calculated at that to hit 25,000 at Skull. So that's just
405 Echo Romeo,
expected
clear for takeoff,
altitude.
26 left.
Any chance we're getting the ATIS over here yet? No. I had it on
Lookout
there already.
departure, November 35, Victor Tango. We've got Golf with Van Nuys, and we'd like to request the ILSV runway 16 right approach with vectors.
35 Victor Tango, SoCal approach, Roger, I'll pass it along for you.
Okay, alright, so we're doing good here on frames. 30 frames, I'm glad we stuck with it. Still looking pretty beautiful outside. Look at those mountains. It's just gorgeous landscape, isn't it, out in the west? All dry. After a while, I'm sure it looks kind of the same to everybody, but absolutely beautiful here in the sim tonight.
Nate, Zero Mike's here. You want to throw your request at me? I can probably work it in now. Great, Zero Mike's here. Departure frequency 134.2, squawk 5451. It's your Mike's here, Rebecca.
Okay, as I was saying before, we were asked to join the Arlen arrival. It's probably time for us to start thinking about approaches. So back to Navigraph. If we if we look down here, I did plan for the 30 runways out there. I have some contingency approaches here. I'm not sure if we're going to get 30 center, 30 right, or 30 left. I'm hoping 30 left. I believe when we get to the airport tonight, we are parking. Let's just get that up.
Walker 175, connects to Cal approach 124.9er.
There we go. So we're probably parking right over here at the GA terminal. Or somewhere in this area wherever the ambulance is going to meet us. So landing runway 30 left. It's a nice long runway. We won't need most of it, but we will probably want to land on the left side. Now, I think more likely than not they land 30 center. I think that's probably a more common thing for them to do at this airport. Now, what leads me to believe that is they have an ILS approach on 30 center and only RNAV on all the other runways.
Van Nuys Tower, straight out departures approved. Runway 16 right, clear for
Not sure what to expect there. Don't care too much. Just kind of curious what to expect. I think we'll wait maybe until we can know which to expect before we load up a procedure in the actual GPS. But it's good to know now that we have some options. We have an RNAV approach to every runway if we want. If we're just after having a center line drawn on the screen to help us, then,
9460 Joey clearance
then we can definitely do that. We have some options. And if for some reason we needed to fly the ILS, we could. I don't envision that that'll be a problem. In fact, we'll probably get a visual approach today. And in that case, I'll probably just join the final approach course anyway, just to kind of keep things a little bit less hectic, especially if I'm having to change frequencies here with the mouse now and look out the window with the mouse. Now, if it's just flying and the throttle and sort of just managing the aircraft that way, power or whatever, I don't mind trying to do that visually. But if it's complicated enough where I'm having to zoom into things and struggle to see the screen and squint at the airport to see if I have it in sight, then that's going to be a bad time for me, and I'm not going to like that too much. So it's kind of weird. All the clouds just disappeared for a minute and reappeared. That's definitely a weather phenomenon that we need to notify someone about, since that has never happened before. It does happen here in X-Plane quite often, but we should probably notify the American Meteorological Society about that event. We'll take Navigraph off the screen so you guys can see what's going on, and we're just going to kind of ride this out for another few minutes. We are called for top of descent at 8 minutes from now, so Current time now
The 35 Victor Tango, climb and maintain
is
5,000, connect SoCal approach
1820 local.
134.2.
And so that being the case, 1828
9460,
local
John Wayne ground runway 20 right taxi via Bravo Kilo.
would be the signal for us to switch. So this should be rather interesting.
258 Charlie Bravo, connect point McGill approach 124.7.
Every time he says 258 Charlie Bravo, I want to reply to him because my call sign is so similar to that normally. I think I'm going to try to reach out to that person, whoever it is, using that call sign and ask them about how they came up with it.
Rate 0 Mike Sierra, connect SoCal departure. 258 Charlie Bravo, point McGill approach, Camry altimeter 282. .com 258 cross Skull at and maintain flight level 250.
Okay, I did read that back, by the way. You guys couldn't hear it. I didn't have time to enable the microphone before that, but let's see. Skull at and maintain 50250. Boy, that looks good to me. So what we're going to do is let this guy do its thing. We're going to bump the altitude down to 250. So the answer is we did not have to talk to them about this through their own SOPs.
550 Juliet Golf, Roger,
they know exactly what to do. This is not their first rodeo, so we'll let that, go. We do have a descent that'll be commanded in 6 minutes and 45 seconds. It'll be a 2.5 degree glide angle, or a descent angle, and 1,500 feet per minute is what will be required. We've set the VNAV altitude is 25,000. That shows the next VNAV restriction. And we have, I'm sorry, flight level 250. We've set the altitude to flight level 250. And now we'll engage VNAV so that at that point, the flight mode annunciator comes on. And we see it's holding flight level tree 10 now. And it knows that whenever the VNAV path is intercepted, it will capture the VNAV path and begin the descent to flight level 250. Now, we should get an annunciation, an audible annunciation that lets us know that our vertical track is approaching. And that's also an indicator that we need to manage our power so that we don't overpower, over-torque, or overheat the engine of the aircraft as we begin our descent and more power is in. Just sort of the opposite problem as we had when we were climbing out, where we had to keep adding power. Now we'll have to keep subtracting power to prevent that problem.
SoCal approach, anterior altimeter 2979er, and you cancel altitude restriction, resume on navigation.
So frames are back to 20. That's interesting. Frames are back to 20. I'm not sure if there's something. I wonder if there's something computationally difficult.
3020 Mike, connect LA Center 125.27.
That's going on with the G1000 that causes it to struggle in that way. That's a very strange problem indeed. So we'll pay attention to
LA
that.
Tower, the wind 230 at 10.25, left clear to land.
All right, just to be clear here, we're 12 miles from Blythe. And then after Blythe, we have 35 miles to Skull. So we have
55 November Tango, John clearance. I have a chance now. Go to the Burbank Airport.
We're going to start our descent slightly before Blythe, according to this. So
maintain 2,000.
We'll be
5,000. Correction, expect 4,000.
At least that's what it's computing. It doesn't seem likely though, since we have 10 nautical miles to go and still 4 minutes. It seems like we're going to go farther than 10 nautical miles in 4 minutes, so we'll see how that looks whenever the time approaches. We're going to let the VNAV attempt to do this for us. We could just jam it down now. We were given a descent instruction to cross, and so we're allowed to hang up here until we're ready to start coming down, as long as we meet that restriction. And
Okay, it still doesn't work when we
I
all talk at the
have
exact
faith
same time.
in
Number 946
Sisselkov
here, John Wayne Tower, runway 20 at Kilo, clear for
that
takeoff,
his
wind
fine product
2308.
here will compute and execute the VNAV
193 Tango
profile
Hotel connects to Cal approach.
appropriately. I am trying to also use my other ear here while I'm talking and running my mouth to listen out for the PilotEdge controller here to talk to me. If I were flying the call sign based on the registration of the aircraft, I would not have a problem recognizing it. Flying the .com call sign creates problems for me because I'm not accustomed to listening to that call sign. So it actually raises interesting questions about how airline pilots get so used to doing that. You know, they must constantly be having to remind themselves and write down what their call sign is that day so that they can listen to the radio. Of course, there's also two pilots and that sort of thing, so maybe that's not such a
258 Charlie Bravo connects to Cal approach
not such an unheard of thing for them. So we are here over top the Blythe VOR. We're half a mile from there. We still have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go before we begin our descent. We are turning left as expected on course towards Skull, and we'll cross Skull at and maintain flight level 250. So that's 6,000 feet to lose. Not a lot. Not a lot at all. In fact, I think we're not going to have any problem with this restriction. Although, you know, one might get a little worried if they were only this, you know, 30 miles or whatever, 20 miles now. No, 32 miles, excuse me, from the fix.
946 here, SoCal departure.
The gut says I should have started down already. But, you know, that comes with time, right? So we'll let it happen. We're just going to let the VNAV do its thing. We're only about a minute away from that descent, so I think we're going to do it just fine. Again, 6,000 feet to lose. Not a big deal. We could probably do that with our eyes closed. Cut the power, drop it. We could probably lose 6,000 feet in 30 seconds if we really wanted to. So we will let it ride. So there's the vertical track announcement, which means we're 1 minute from the situation here. Our vertical speed target is 1,445 feet per minute. We're currently 1,000 foot below. We're approaching, so in 30 seconds we should be at 0 deviation, or pretty close to it anyway, which would be indicative of needing to start down on the descent. Once our target and our vertical speed required match, it should start down. And it looks like the math is going to work out pretty close here. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work out, but I am watching it pretty closely. And we're going to make sure that at the appropriate time we actually get a rate of descent. So let's just confirm that too. So we're going to watch this bug here and make sure that we're actually descending. So now we should have started our descent now, and we have not. So we need to get on this and start down, because if we don't, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. So something's definitely wrong here. We did not capture the VNAV profile, but luckily, because we were on it, we didn't have any problem with that.
Completion, execute missed approach procedure as published.
All right, let's just check and see where we're at. We require 600 or 1,600 feet down per minute. We are currently 1,200, so let's knock that down even more. Let's get below.
Connect Albuquerque Center 128.45.
128.45.com 258.
For 405 Echo Romeo connects SoCal approach 134.2.
All right, so just keeping an eye on the VNAV, the vertical speed 1900. That should do it. I see it's calling for 1700, so we should actually be below it. So we should be okay. Albuquerque.com 258, level 290, descending 250.
SATCOM 258, Albuquerque, Center, Roger.
And we're restricted flight level 250 at and maintain 250 after Scully.
Roger. No 26 Foxtrot Papa, runway 34 right, clear for the option. Wind,
okay.
there it is, wind 36015, and on the go, make right close traffic report, Mesa each time.
With 9 miles to go, we are decreasing, and our target is 1652. We require 1789, and we're at 2000, so we should have no problem with this restriction. Meeting 250.
The Keno 2 arrival, the Reno altimeter 292, and expect only 16 left.
Okay, 2000 to go and 6 miles. Let's see if we can get the ATIS now.
SATCOM 258, cross paint and maintain 14,000. The Phoenix altimeter, I'll give you the Phoenix one for now, 2967.
2967, and that was paint at 24,000. Or flight level 240.
Paint at 15,000, 15,000, sir.
Okay, paint at 15,000, thank you. .com 258.
I think I stepped out. SATCOM 258, paint at 14,000, 14,000.
Okay, paint at 14,000. .com 258.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so we
2490 taxi,
don't want to adjust that just yet. Let's see how far we are away from paint. Boy, I screwed that up. I don't know why I thought he said 25. It was really confusing me. So that's a descent instruction. We can begin our descent now. We have quite a bit of ways to go here. So rather than that, we'll let VNAV calculate it for us again. And 14,000 at paint. So we'll stay as high as we can, as long as we can. And there we go. So that's that, 14,000, which means our top of descent now changes to 3 minutes from now. That's when we'll start down. And we'll start down a little bit before that on the assumption that VNAV is not going to capture our altitude as expected. I am going to go ahead and set 14,000. And since that time, I tell you what, I think I heard the ATIS coming in. I'm going to go ahead and grab the ATIS because I need that altimeter setting again because I have erased it from my memory bank since he mentioned it. And it looks like we don't have an ATIS just yet. Okay. All right, we might need to ask him for that then. I'm going to keep this tuned over here just in case. And I'll just ask him for that again. Albuquerque.com 258. Can we get the altimeter setting again, please?
SATCOM 258, the Phoenix altimeter 2967.
2967. Thanks, .com 258.
Southwest 1782 back.
All right, very good. So we have quite a bit of ways to go here before we get there. I'm going to go ahead and start a nice shallow descent towards 14,000, and then we'll adjust it as necessary. So we'll start a nice little 1,000 foot per minute descent
the O'Neill altimeter 2995. Let me
down
look up the automated weather and
14,000.
2995, and we'll go on the request 24 officer.
So when we get to this altitude, we'll go ahead and engage the inertial separator, get the lights on, and and start programming the
1782. You didn't have any ride reports in Reno, did you?
programming approach into Mesa tonight.
No, I had one aircraft in there earlier who didn't give me a report. I haven't had anything else tonight, sorry. No worries, I'll be your first. How's your ride so far coming from Beatty? It's not bad at all. It's been pretty smooth.
So I've actually changed my mind. I'm going to just go ahead and save myself the time and go ahead and get an approach plugged in here. It actually doesn't matter which one we put in. I'm more or less just concerned about having some kind of final approach course, even if I have to parallel track it. Just having something in there so that I don't get busy and forget it would be nice. So I think we're just going to plug in the RNAV runway 30 left. I believe that's what that says. RNAV 30 left. Yep. Okay. So a little less precise than the other two. So no vertical portion to that localizer performance approach. We'll punch that in. We will, let's just pop over to Navigraph.
What's up? I just want to see if you're back, as you can contact Oakland Center 127.45. Now we'll see you next time.
1C745, sorry I forgot to call you there. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you.
No worries.
And who was that? I wish I knew who that was because that call sign sounds so similar to mine. Okay, let's see. The RNAV runway.
Center Lux 258, 390. Super smooth up here.
Lux 258 Oakland Center. Good evening.
Yeah, so we'll just program it from CZoo. And actually, if we do vectors, it'll put it out that far anyway. So let's just select vectors here. And I'm not going to worry about programming the minimums in because not necessary right now for anticipating that. We will load it and not activate it. Now we should have a nice little approach course in the GPS for us to follow if for some reason we felt like we needed to have that on board. All right, so we're monitoring our descent here. Time to top a descent, 1 minute 26 seconds. I'm actually going to go ahead and increase to 1,500 feet per minute down now, just to get that sort of done, out of the way. We're at 1,500 feet per minute now. We need to set the baro to 2967, descending through the transition level. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. Let's see the transition level here, the lowest usable flight level here in this area with the altimeter at 2967. Somebody drop that into the chat. And I don't have that memorized, but I would love to know if somebody can drop that in that might be watching here.
Seattle Center, Skok 24 Alpha, Sierra, the weather at Newport.
I believe it's probably 190 at least, so I'm going to go ahead and set 2967 in the baro here so that we don't bust the altitude. This is a pretty significant altimeter change from what we were at before. So when we were at standard at 202, it's almost a 200-foot difference. So that's good that we set that now. I'll have to look that up. Transition level when the altimeter is 2967.
Cleared ILS 16, report procedure turn inbound 24 Alpha Sierra.
Okay, let's just get this set up here. We're currently, I'd just like to get an idea how far away from the airport we are. 12, if we put this to view and cumulative.
Southwest 1782, I'm sorry, did I miss a descent clearance from you?
Then we're about 83 miles from the airport. We were over torquing just a hair there, so I'll just sort of take that out. We're descending at 240 knots here, so we're doing pretty good there. We were paint at 14,000, and we are 22 from paint. So I think we're doing pretty doggone good there. I wonder if paint here is related to the painted desert. That seems like something that might be in play here in this area of the world. Boy, that's pretty, isn't it? Those relief.
GPS 2974, contact Oakland Center.
Just the relief of the topography here is gorgeous. Just
2745 GPS 2974.
Do definitely want to travel there. So now we're definitely below, so we're at 17,000 feet with the local altimeter setting. So we know for sure we have transitioned into altitude zone instead of flight level zone.
2974, flight level 350.
UPS 2974, Oakland Center, good evening.
So we're descending now 240 knots. That's okay. I just didn't want all that power in because it's easy to over torque on the descent. And we don't need all that to be going down, and we're not in too much of a hurry. Now looking at the bar across the top, it looks like we're about 85% done with this flight, and I think that pretty much matches our expectations here. So 4.5 miles from Cali.
Roger.
Do we expect this turn? That's a great question. Do we expect it? We do expect a turn to the left at Cali. As we can see here in Navigraph, we are now sort of more of an easterly heading. Right now we should be able to look out the window here and see Phoenix. Well, maybe not, unless there's a mountain. Oh, it looks like this mountain is in the way of Phoenix. But we should maybe be able to get the, let's see, if we just switch that and switch it back, if the ATIS will come alive. Still nothing on that ATIS, 133.5. And actually, that's a little disconcerting to me. We've not been able to pick it up yet. But with line of sight being what it is, I would maybe expect that to be the case. So,
Oakland Center, UPS 2974,
not
just
such a big
requesting
deal.
a 2-minute coffee break.
UPS 2974, it's approved, calling back.
Okay, 2974.
Okay, the VNAV descent for 14,000 at paint. And looks like we're going to hit that very easily here with 8 miles to spare. So we could have started, we knew, right? We started that descent earlier than VNAV commanded it. I just didn't want to get behind the 8 ball again with the VNAV situation there. So it's unfortunate we're going to have to manage that the rest of the time here. I'm not sure what happens that causes that. But anyway, inertial separator is going to come on. We're going to lose a little bit of torque. We're going to be monitoring that and put it back as the inertial separator comes on. Keep our speed up at least as high as we can anyway. The outside air temperature now 8 degrees centigrade at 14,000. So pretty hot and steamy out here, even in the late afternoon. The sun is setting off to our west over there, so that's nice and pretty for us. And Navigraph is up, so we'll take that down so that you can see what's going on here. Just a little out the window shot quickly. I guess that's not out the window, that's actually technically outside the aircraft. So that's kind of pretty. So we're looking to land in Phoenix, which is, best I can tell, just that area to the left of course, between those two relief features on the topography there. So we should get, I'm guessing this is probably where we would get handed over to.
.com 258, contact Phoenix approach 128.65.
2865.com 258. And well, that was about right timing, right? 128.65. Oops, one couple too soon. PhoenixApproach.com 258, level 14,000.
.com 258, Phoenix approach, hello. Stand by just a second, I'll get you the Williams altimeter. UPS 2974, Oakland Center, roger.
Okay, so we do have the inertial separator on, and
.com 258, the Williams Gateway altimeter 2972. Automated weather's calling winds 2603, 10 miles, ceilings 15,000 broken. A very chilly 41 degrees Celsius down there, altimeter 2972. Let me know if I have an approach request.
We can take the visual there at Mesa for DOTCOM 258.
DOTCOM 258, roger. Fly heading 08, yes, vectors for visual approach into Williams Gateway.
Okay, was that heading 080?
Affirmative.
Okay, heading 080, we'll expect vectors for the visual approach to Mesa, DOTCOM 258. Okay, so we flip over to heading mode, we take a 1 degree turn to the right there. Not a significant turn right now, but of course, if you are new to flying approaches, then what you may not realize is that if we had stayed on the GPS, it would just continue to route us according to its preferences. And now at this point, we are flying instructions as issued by the controller, also known as vectors. And I'm going to increase the range here so you can kind of see where we're at in conjunction to things. So Sky Harbor is, I believe that's Sky Harbor. Let's see. No, is that Goodyear? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, up here is Sky Harbor.
Southwest 1782, Oakland Center, roger.
And we're just taking vectors right across here.
Gateway information Alpha.
Oh.
100 Zulu weather. Wind light and variable. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 15,000 broken. Temperature 39. Dew point 7. Altimeter 2971. Arriving runways 30 center. 30 left, departing runways 30 right, 30 left. Advise on initial contact, you have Alpha.
That sounds suspiciously like the X-plane ATIS, which I would hesitate to report. I think there's a reason he read me that weather, and that's probably because maybe the ATIS isn't working there at Gateway. It's not one of the airports that they necessarily have an ATIS for in their system, which would make sense to me. So I'm glad that he read that to us. And as you heard, it's a chilly 41 degrees, quite the afternoon here in sunny, beautiful, warm Phoenix. So just to remind ourselves of the situation going into this airport, the airport's elevation is at, we can check that here at the landing field elevation, 1,480. So we're still 13,000 feet above the airport elevation right now. We do have our inertial separator on, so we're burning a little bit more fuel, but we're down low and we don't want to forget to turn that on. Maybe in the future we'll get that on a little later in the game. But as we're entering the environment here around Phoenix, and there's probably some jet traffic, I am going to go ahead and turn on the taxi light or correction, the landing light, so that folks can see us just a little bit better. And just for giggles, I may turn on the pulse light. Normally I would do that a little closer down to the airport, but you know, if that's what suits us, that's what suits us. Oh, now we get a little bit of a layer. Of course. So that seems about right for
DOTCOM 258, descend and maintain 6,000.
Descend and maintain 6,000, DOTCOM 258. All right, so 6,000, vertical speed down. Let's start it down. Now let's finish adjusting. 6,000 on the meter. Just kidding. I hate that phrase. Okay, 6,000, and let's get a little bit higher of a descent rate going, and maybe just not so much power. We don't need all that torque. We're pretty close to the airport, actually. If we look, we are. Let's see. KIWA 35 miles now. Descending through a layer.
1782, contact NorCal approach, excuse me.
The lights are on. Let's just do the descent checklist, make sure we got everything. The altimeter setting is correct. The windshield protection system is off. We didn't need that today. The fuel quantity's checked. The fullest tank has been selected automatically by the airplane.
North
Their seat belts are fastened.
1782 is out of 14,000.
And the inertial separator is on.
Southwest 1782,
And the landing
NorCal
lights
approach,
and
the Reno altimeter 299F5.
other appropriate
and
lights are
visual approach,
on.
only 16 left.
Expect visual approach 16 left, Southwest 1782.
And Southwest 1782, no time to start for the vectors for now. Like the present, turn right heading 320 vectors, visual only 16 left, and descend to maintain 9,000.
Right 320, descend 9,000, Southwest 1782.
I like this controller. I'm not sure who it is, but I like his attitude. He's a very cool guy. Goldsy's cool too. I feel terrible that I missed that call from him at a busy time for him, but that's just a function of trying to do too many things at one time. I think this is probably why real pilots don't stream using complicated streaming software on their approach or even in their cruise. Lessons learned. I think I'm not sure that that airport or that area that I saw earlier was the airport. Maybe it was actually. It is now just a beam our left side here, I think, or at least coming up to it. You can see the outline of the Bravo airspace coming up there. So again, 6,000 will leave us 4,500 above the field elevation, and so we're gonna not be too high there. So that'll be great. And in about 25 miles, that's where we'll be. So let's see, we're losing about to 25 miles at 316 miles per hour, 10 minutes, 1,500 feet per minute. Oh yeah, we'll be well within the boat there. And now I like what I'm seeing here. I don't like the rocking motion that we're getting. Maybe these are updrafts over the mountains. So sometimes those weather phenomena that bring updrafts out over the mountains can cause a little bit of bouncing, but not a huge fan of that. And we'll just take a look here out to our east, and yeah, we should see the airport about 20 miles away. We'll definitely want to start finding that so that we can report it in sight when the controller asks us to do that. But right now, I'm afraid I just can't see anything that far away due to the haze layer that is surrounding the area here. Now, we're pretty low, right? Yeah, so we're 8,500, so it's not like it's going to be right here or anything. We are looking for an airport with sort of a southeast to northwest set of 3 runways. And yeah, so all right, we're going to just continue to bring our torque back here just a hair. We're creeping up there a little too high on this descent. And we're still 255 knots. We're actually breaking the law here. There we go. And we can start slowing this puppy down a little bit. So I don't want to be this fast on the downwind. I'm going to go ahead and slow now.
Bravo 258, contact Los Angeles Center 133.2. Enjoy your fermented herring.
It's fermented herring. Why are there so many 258s? There's 258 Charlie Bravo. There's whatever that guy was, and then there's me. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's very interesting. Okay, 230 knots on the downwind. That's a little bit better for me, to my taste. So, especially this close to the airport. We are now roughly, and we're 6,500, roughly 12 miles now, and the airport ought to be just to our left, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, just to the left of us. And let's just see if we can find that guy out there in the distance now. Is that the airport? That certainly looks like it could be an airport, doesn't it? Alright, well, I think we might have something in sight, although there's a significant haze layer now that might prevent us from seeing it until we're pretty doggone close to it. Given the sense that he's going to probably ask us to find the airport and then make a visual approach to it. I'm going to go ahead and reduce our speed now to 200 knots, and I might have pulled out a little bit too much. But I just want to be ready and slow so that we can see what we need to see in order to report the field in sight and be able to make an approach. That looks like lights. Oh, that's runways. Yep, there we go. The field is in sight, guys. The field is in sight. So hopefully, you know what? I'm going to adjust this just for fun. 7.6.
SATCOM 258, so you can visit and maintain 3000 Williams Gateway Airport, 12 o'clock, 6 miles, port the field in sight.
Field's in sight, .com 258, down to 3000.
SATCOM 250, clear visual approach of the Williams Gateway Airport. Report your IFR cancellation on this frequency on the ground at 122.2. Change to advisory frequency is approved.
Okay, we'll change the advisory frequency now and record the visual approach into the Gateway Airport, .com 258. Alright, so that's something I didn't do very well. I didn't check out what the... I thought this was a towered field. Oh, I know what the deal is. So this is one of those airports where they don't control it on PilotEdge, but it is a controlled field in the real
1782,
world.
turn left heading 210.
So let's get over to the Unicom frequency. There we go. And there's the field. Let's pull out power. Oh, we're already well under the speed because I pulled out some power there. Let's turn a right downwind for runway 30 left. And get the autopilot off, of course. And continue that descent. So we're going to pull out more power. I'm a little hesitant to make this approach in this weather, but I think we should be okay. I don't want to get too much of a steep descent going here, but I do want to give it a nice chance to get down. Remember the field elevation here, 1,384. So we should be looking for something along those lines for landing zone elevation. And at this point we are, yeah, we're just about right to set our heading bug for the downwind. So the blue is our downwind, and there's our airport there. We'll take it out a good little ways here until we're comfortable with our descent rate and we're comfortable with our altitude, and a turn back to the airport. Our gear is out. Our first notch of flaps is not in yet, however, so probably put that in turning the base turn back to the airport. And so I'm going to just go ahead and start that turn now. We should use that loss of lift in the turn to descend a little quicker, I believe. And we're going to go ahead and keep it coming for a nice tight turn back to the final approach course due to the distance that we have to go here. All right, below 170, I'm going to go ahead and dump in the notch of flaps there that we need for the first notch anyway, and trim down so that we can continue a descent down. Obviously we want to be not too crazy on the descent, but I need to get this airplane turned back to the final approach course or we're going to majorly overshoot it. In fact, I think we already have. Just trying to watch the altitude here, 2,500 on that. So we're now 1,000 above roughly, and coming back to it, we should see the airport. There's the airport, and we did overshoot 28 left, but we're going to give it our best go. We're going to dump in the rest of our flaps here. Yeah, we hear you. We hear you. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. There's a reason why you have your nickname. So I'm going to go ahead and square up with the runway 28 left final, which I overshot. And I overshoot almost every final in X-plane because, like, for example, right now, if I was in the aircraft and I needed to look at the runway, I would simply just turn my head around there and peek around the post there. But you know, as you can see right here, that's not really an opportunity. And I have not announced myself on the Unicom frequency, but I will. Gateway Airport traffic. This is a brown TBM on the final runway 28 left Gateway. All right, so that's a little bit of a mistake. We're also a little low on the approach. We're trying to maintain between 90 and 95 knots on the approach, and we should not be 300 or 200 above out here, but we're visual, so you know it's not breaking any rules or anything, but just a little bit of a thing that we shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and disengage the yaw damper, so that is not a factor in our landing here, and slow down a little bit for our approach VREF expectations, and we can plan to probably land this a little bit long. Oof, this wind is something. All right, straighten it out down the runway, kill that power, hold it off, hold it off, hold it off, hold it off. Yeah, we're going to be a little long, but oh, I hate that. That was a terrible landing, and but we're down, and c'est la vie. We'll just let it kind of roll out to the end on its own. And the first thing that we're going to do, clear the runway, is go to a commercial break while we end our flight sim economy flight, so that we don't have any mishaps with that thing ending. And then we're going to announce ourselves and get taxied into the airport. So let's get clear of the runway here. Probably wouldn't hurt to be on the center line, would it? There we go. And there we go. Stopped. Go ahead and clean up the aircraft so the flaps are coming up, the landing lights off, the strobe lights off. We did not have the alternating lights on. Right now we will, let's see, best way to do this probably is to bring up Navigraph for just a second and get that Navigraph window moved over just a hair, and now you don't have to go to a separate window to not see the personal details of my flight sim economy flight. And we're going to finish the flight, and the results are logged and life is good. That's excellent. We can close flight sim economy now. We can return Navigraph to its centered position and turn off Navigraph for the remainder of this endeavor here. If the software will allow. It's actually having a little trouble connecting. So we're going to turn right Bravo and taxi to the GA terminal and make a left at hotel. So let's just turn right Bravo and make a left hotel. Let's just look over here. Yeah, right Bravo. This is Bravo here. So we're on the right track. Getting 30 frames per second here. Not too shabby. Not sure what to make of that landing. I'm still having some little problem with that, but it is what it is. Can't take it back now. And we did land in one piece, bounced a little bit, but that sort of thing happens from time to time, I suppose. So we'll expect the next left to be hotel. And this is another thing. I always find myself needing to sync up the center viewpoint. There we go. Now we can remain on the center line without much problem. But before that, just a little challenging. The inertial separator, of course, is on. Now the after landing checklist. The de-ice is off. The inertial separator is on. The windshields as required. The pitot heat can come off. The bleed switch can be turned off. We'll go ahead and get the AC off as well. We don't need that on. And the stall heater off. There we go. At least we can start doing that stuff. This is hotel. We need to turn in here to our parking area. Starting to get some stuttering there. There we go. The transponder we can set appropriately here to, oh, it's already set to on. I guess it goes off when you land. I'm not sure exactly how that works in the TBM. The flaps are already up, and the trims can be set for takeoff for the next guy. Now, ironically, the next guy is me, so I guess it doesn't matter that much. So that's the after landing checklist complete. Let's turn in here and go park at one of those little buildings over there. That's where our patient's ambulance is waiting. So I'll just scoot right over there. I can just imagine them all waving to us at this point. Now, in 41-degree heat, I probably was a little premature in turning off the air conditioning. Normally, when we're landing, it's a much more temperate situation, but that's okay. We'll just presume that that's all done without much hassle there. And I think I'm just going to swing this thing out to the right, park here, facing this direction. There we go, just like so. Okay, welcome to Mesa. We're going to set the parking brake and immediately dismiss the chime. And at this point, the bleed switch is off and everything is set there. We're going to put it to flight idle for just about 2 minutes. So let's get a timer up. Well, actually, we can just look here. Local time 20:07, and it was probably 6:45 when we did that. So we're going to leave it at idle for 2 minutes. The taxi lights can come off. The AP and trims can come off. So we don't need that anymore. And we'll just start working our flow here all the ways around. The throttle eventually will go to the cutoff switch, the cutoff mode. I have heard that this needs to be in the low idle position for 10 seconds before cutoff. So we'll just let that happen. I'm not sure if that's actually required or not, but we will let it happen. We're parked here now. We're not too worried about any of the debris or anything floating up in here, so we are going to take off the inertial separator. 08:45. We've been pretty close to idle for the right amount of time, so at this point I'm just going to move the lever here to low idle. Believe me, Sisselkov will let us know if we've done something that offends the aircraft. So I'm going to say that if nothing bad happened here, that everything is okay. And now 10 seconds later, we'll move it to cutoff. The inertial separator is off. The aux boost fuel pump has not come on, but it is going to come on in a second because we don't have any fuel pressure. There it is. Now we can turn that off. We're going to put this fuel selector to manual and dismiss these chimes. And the parking brake is still set. And we're going to turn off the pilot oxygen. That's good. And let's just do a check of all of our switches here. These are good, these are good, these are good. There, it's all the way back. This is good. Flaps are up. Don't have to worry about this stuff. Across the top, this is all set in the configuration that we'd expect. There's lights out on that. Oh, we got the nav lights to go off. So the nav lights are now off. And we can open up. So open up the doors, put the chocks in the wheels. We'll turn off the parking brake. That is unnecessary now with the chocks in. And also probably not good for it to be left that way. And our folks will be getting out of the aircraft. We'll kill the aircraft.
Clear. Temperature 17. 2.13.
Oh, that's bizarre. And that's going to annoy me. Because now I have no way to turn. Let's see if we can do this differently here. What do I have to do to get that frequency to be different? I'll just change it to something else. And, you know, we can disconnect from PilotEdge. And it's going to take a while for the Garmin to start up. So here's what I'll do. I'll just shut this off. And hopefully that voice doesn't come back on again. I'm not sure why with the aircraft off we're hearing that. If you don't know, you can shut this thing down by going here until it says shut down and holding this button. It'll also auto go off after 5 minutes. So now that's shut down. We do need to come to the payload manager here and put the tires and caps on, the static wicks, the pitot covers, and the static port covers in the back. I would say that this aircraft is safely stowed. Our passenger is now out, loaded into his ambulance. We'll close him up and we will call it a day. And that is the flight of .com 258 from Oakland to the beautiful, scenic Mesa, Arizona. Mesa, Arizona. That's right. Mesa, Arizona, in the Phoenix area. And with that, we will conclude the stream. I'll leave you to look at this for just a few more minutes while we close it out.